Right, I have on my left Bakita, Dan and George. Thank you. Oh, I'm offline, sorry. We'll get to that. Right. First question of the evening. Students have consistently told us that they believe living costs while studying here are too high. What change do you think would make the most difference to Surrey students? So once again, students have consistently told us that they believe living costs while studying here are too high. What change do you think would make the most difference to Surrey students? Bakita.
Okay, hi. I believe that changes to rent would make the most beneficial difference to Surrey students. Accommodation affects most students and it's our largest expenditure. I believe that the university should make more of an effort to absorb some of the accommodation costs. I'm not suggesting that that accommodation should be free, but increasing the cost of housing, which happened in 2010 by 5%, and justifying it by making improvements that we are yet to see, but carrying on to and proposing that next year accommodation should go up by 3.5% along with inflation is unacceptable. Of course there are other living costs and the union should be the voice to publicise and change these also, but seeing as the university is obligated to listen to us in a way that other bodies and companies are not, I believe that we should be knocking on the university's doors first for change and difference. After all, these decision makers, those who are deciding to increase accommodation costs over and over again, wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Surrey students, so they should really start listening to us.
Thank you very much. Daniel.
Thank you very much. For me, it was a tough decision between accommodation and looking at the bursary system, but I chose to go with accommodation. Just to talk a little bit about my own experience quickly. Before coming to Surrey, I was at the University of Warwick for a while, and there I paid £70 a week for halls of residence. That was on a 30-week contract, so you paid purely for term time, and you could store your stuff in your room over the holidays free of charge. I think here, having lived in Cathedral Court for some time last year, I think it was £87 a week when I was in there. Next year it's going up to £93.50 for a Band C room. There's more that can be done in terms of looking at the pricing strategy, maybe looking at, for students from lower income backgrounds, providing them with shorter contract times so that they don't have to pay for an empty room over the holidays. And, you know, some people are in a position where they can afford to pay for Band D and E, and that's fantastic. But that should be used in a sense to make sure that costs for the lower bands are lower and fairer for students. I would also say that the accommodation needs to look at exactly what it's providing in terms of value for money. At Warwick, again, you know, the £70 a week included a cleaning service, whereas here your rooms aren't cleaned unless you're in a Band D or E property, I believe. So there's more to look at in terms of what accommodation offers overall to make sure that students are getting value for money.
Thank you. George, what do you think about cost of living for Surrey students?
As Vice President of Welfare, one of my responsibilities is to look after the well-being of the students and trying to improve it and support them in where and when they need it. So, as for the housing situation, one way to improve it is to provide useful information that students can use and some tips that they can use and they can minimize their costs. And we can create a page in the website of the union, and we can use that page so that students can post if they have a room available or something that they want to share with the other students, and they can use that information in order to minimize their living costs. Also, living in the university campus is much cheaper than living outside the university. So, as vice president, I will try to contact the accommodation office and the university in order to find a way that maybe we can increase the accommodation in the campus or near the campus, that the students have to pay one standard amount, not as much as other students paying. And also, students living outside the campus, they pay more money because the utility costs are much higher than living in the campus. In the campus, we have a standard amount, so that's why we have a difference there. And I believe that Surrey is quite expensive as an area because we are near London. But if we can find some tips that we can use, so we can minimize our costs, we can manage and we can benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're just going to pause very briefly while our... Thank you very much. We're back in the room. Sorry for that. Sorry for those at home. This is all being recorded as well, so if it cuts out at home, don't worry. We've got it all safe, I think. Right. Welfare. Question 2. Surrey has no strong tradition of active liberation campaigns. A liberation campaign is a sort of an NUS collective term for women's, black, LGBT, disabled type campaigning. Surrey has no strong tradition of active liberation campaigns. What does this tell you about Surrey students? We're going to start with Dan this time.
Okay, thank you. I think the temptation here would be to say that it tells us Surrey students are apathetic, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think what it does tell us is that maybe the Students' Union isn't at the moment geared up for supporting liberation campaigns. And as VP Welfare, I would be looking to get that going in the near future. I mean, the LGBT Society, for example, is very active on campus, and I'm sure that if they were given the right support and the right resources, that if they wanted to, they would be able to run a full liberation campaign. I've got fairly close links with many NUS officers, with sabbatical officers at other universities up and down the country who have themselves run liberation campaigns at their universities. So what I'd be looking to do if elected is to bring them into Surrey to familiarise themselves with the relevant societies that would be at the centre of liberation campaigns so that we can get this going and so that we can empower students from different groups who are traditionally underrepresented to make sure that everyone has a say and is active and happy at Surrey University.
Dan, you said there if LGBT had more resources, perhaps they could do something. What sort of resources are you thinking about? Money?
It doesn't necessarily have to be money. I mean, every society obviously gets its funding, and that debate was had last night in terms of how funding should be done. I think in terms of resources, it just needs to be that there's someone at the union that they can go to, they can ask questions, they can have someone to point them in the right direction if they're trying to start up a campaign. They might not understand what materials they need and what messages they should be trying to get across, and as VP Welfare, that would be my job.
Okay. Bakita?
This question made me think that Surrey students may not traditionally be active when it comes to liberation campaigns, but we show our passions elsewhere. We must remember that Surrey Union represents Surrey students, and therefore the passion and the enthusiasm that Surrey shows for charitable events must be celebrated. We've seen things through RAG and Do More. I believe that the union perhaps should publicise the liberation campaigns that are available to students, but if students are choosing not to take part in them, then we should go according to what students ask for. The union, as the union's here to facilitate and not to direct, I believe that we should just be supporting the campaigns that students wish to have.
The point is, students aren't wishing to have campaigns.
Then perhaps this suggests that students are comfortable here at Surrey.
Are you comfortable? Yeah. There we are, very good. We'll go home then. George.
I believe that Surrey students are proved to be mature and well adapted to the 21st century. We have established that we can exist together in an area regardless of creed, race, or sexual orientation. When I came to the University of Surrey in 2009, we had the president, Miss Elizabeth Simos. She was a girl. When I came here, I understand that from that time onwards, the University of Surrey has accepted the women's rights to act in their behalf of their society. Also, this year we have the privilege to have Osama as our president. He is from Sudan, and we accepted him as regardless of his race, so we have equal opportunities. Also, our LGBT society is one of the biggest societies in the UK in the university area, and they have their biggest event these nights, which we accept and we support them. So as VP welfare candidate, I don't believe that Surrey students are not well aware of that, but I believe that we don't have to take part in any liberation campaigns to prove what's already proved.
Thank you very much. Now it's an opportunity for you to ask some questions. I've already had some coming in online. Is there anybody out there that wishes to make a point just now? No? Nobody dying to ask a question? I've got one from online. There's a lot of work being done by the government to protect students from poorer backgrounds. There are bursaries, fee waivers, those kind of initiatives. We're talking about UK students here. Obviously, if you're from a higher income background, then you'll probably be all right with parental support. But what can the university, what can the union, what can we do for our favourite term, the squeeze middle? Students from middle income backgrounds who receive no extra support, and their family may have more than one child going to university that all need support. So a problem probably quite prescient for Surrey students, the squeeze middle, students of middle income families not eligible for extra government support, but not with a large family income to support them. George, tell us about the squeeze middle.
I believe that if the university can provide the funding for that students, so they can have maybe they can access the website and they can fill a form, and afterwards we have to just to give the funding to that student if we see that they need the funding. And also we can raise other fundings from other companies that are around the university, because I think without the university in Guildford, there will not be many works here around, so we can push that as well to get some more funding for that student.
Dan?
I think we need to look at things like scholarships and increasing the threshold for bursaries in order to kind of help out those in the squeezed middle. I'm very fortunate myself, being from a kind of lower income background, that I receive a very generous amount from the university. Whereas those who are in an income bracket that's not too much higher than mine will receive little or no support. So the university do need to look at how they allocate that money. In terms of scholarships, I think the university is rapidly climbing the league tables. It needs to obviously attract the highest grades possible in its candidates, and in order to do that, it needs to give them some kind of financial reward for coming here. People that are from families that earn over, say, £30,000, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why the university can't put aside some money and say that anyone who gets AAB, instead of getting the full amount of £1,000 a year, which other students might get if they're from a poorer background, that they get, say, 500 or 750. There are plenty of options available. You mentioned fee waivers before. I don't think that they're necessarily the answer, but then as we're going up to £9,000 fees, if there was an attractive policy put forward from the university, or if there was pressure from the students, then as VP Welfare I'd be looking into that and obviously supporting what the students need.
Just to clarify, fee waivers is a tightly regulated area, and actually the Vice-Chancellor would agree with you that fee waivers are probably not the way forward. However, their hands are tied by legislation. Bakita.
I would also suggest looking at the scholarships that are available. Currently, next year, those who would normally receive a scholarship, those who are coming in will now not be able to receive scholarships when they're achieving a first if they're from a middle income background. I think we also need to publicise the fact that there are hardship funds and there are emergency loans available on campus. I feel that there are many services available here. As VP Welfare, I would hope to publicise them more. It's not so much that the services are at fault, it's more that the union and the university should do all that they can to publicise the fact that they are available to students on campus.
Okay, forgive me, but you've all given the slightly easy answer to that question, which is, what do we do with students who are hard up? We give them more. Unfortunately, the case is, where is this going to come from? The pie chart is only so big. The university income is, the university runs pretty much in a break-even status. What are you going to cut? What are you going to cut back on if you're going to give more to these students, or you're going to cut back in accommodation?
Who first?
Anybody can go first.
Okay, I would, in response to that, if you look at the university's accounts for 2010-11, there was, I believe, a surplus of £10.9 million, which was up from £4 million in the financial year before that. So, you know, money is tight, but there is money there. And it's down to the university, if it wants to continue improving in terms of the league tables, to look at how it allocates that money to people from all income backgrounds, so that everyone can come to the university and that they can achieve the best possible grades.
George, where's the money going to come from?
I think we had the discussion with the finance team of the university. They have some surplus, but that surplus going towards their loan. So I don't know if they have any excess money to use for the funding or for scholarships for the students. I think I told before that I believe that if we ask the businesses around the university campus, because they're working here, they have jobs here because the university exists in Guildford. So maybe we can have scholarships from different companies around the campus.
Bakita?
Yeah, as has been already mentioned, the £10 million surplus could be used towards supporting students. As well as that, I think there should be, maybe the onus should be on the university, but then there should be support provided for students in that throughout the year we should help them with their budgeting. We should make sure that they are exposed to part-time employers if they wish to have a job as well. So there should be a money awareness campaign. So the university should play their role to support. The union also, because we are the mouthpiece for the students. But we should also empower students to ensure that they are able to budget and work with the money that they're earning throughout their time at Surrey.
Thank you very much. Okay, you probably saw on the Stag a couple of weeks ago there was an article about how much money Surrey takes in fines. Leaving the library aside, because that sits with education, how do the candidates think is the best way to police accommodation? Are fines the answer, or would you like to see a more of a standard disciplinary approach? Do you think there should be a link between your academic career and your behaviour? Or do you think that the fines are acceptable? How do you think discipline should be handled outside of the education arena on the campus? Bakita, start us off.
To deter students from taking out, from not giving back books to the library, I do believe that
leave the library aside 1 minute, because that's education. We're talking about things like parties in the residences, vandalism, the kind of things that happen outside of the education arena.
I think that there should be some sort of deterrence. I just believe that, as obviously keeping welfare in mind, that the fines that are taken from the students should be put back into the university, should be put back into the union to make sure that experiences for students are better. I don't think there's an issue with the fines, it's just how they're used.
Okay. George?
I believe that because they are doing the vandalism and that stuff in their houses, they have to pay the fines, but afterwards that money can be used for the scholarships that we have the issue before. So I don't know where the money now are going, but I believe that we have to get the money back to the students in some way.
Dan, where do you stand on fines?
In principle, I don't have a problem with fines as long as they're appropriate and they're not putting unnecessary strain on people. If people act inappropriately, then yes, they should be punished, but they shouldn't be financially crippled for their behaviour. I think the issue here is there needs to be kind of greater awareness of what is and isn't acceptable. I must admit I'm not 100% sure on what the accommodation policy is in terms of parties and such now and punishment, but it would seem sensible if there was some kind of 3 strikes warning. And if you go, if you've had fair warning, then maybe look at tougher action that's non-monetary.
Okay, very briefly, a supplementary here, and I'll go in the same order. Very contentious topic is withholding degrees for non-academic debt. Student leaves, owing accommodation money, their degree is held back until such time that the debt is covered. Something the NUS are looking to challenge in court. It's something that no university will take to court. Where do you stand on withholding degrees if you owe the university money for non-academic debt? Just to remind that was Bakita, George, Daniel.
I don't think it's acceptable. I believe that perhaps there should be a contract before the student goes to Surrey University to ensure that they are aware that they have to pay back all the fines that they've incurred over their time at Surrey. I don't think it's fair to link non-academic fines with a degree.
Okay, George?
I believe that because it's not academic fines, they don't have to. The university don't have to hold the degree back to the student. I think they have to find another way to pay the fines, but they have to get their degree in time. So, don't know what's the problem there.
Thanks, Dan.
I don't see how withholding a degree from someone who has put 3 or 4 years of their life into earning can ever be seen as acceptable, regardless of the financial situations outside of their academic life. There can always be something else done. A student that has a degree is going to go on and get a job, so they're going to be better able to repay that money. So there needs to be some kind of step where the accounts department sit down with the student and say, look, you owe us this much money, we'll give you your degree as long as you meet the terms of this agreement to repay it. And if for some reason that isn't acceptable to the student, then there needs to be some kind of body to look into that and kind of consider any appeals that may arise.
Okay, I'm very keen to hear what you think on the floor, what you think in the audience. Have we got any comments or questions from... We've got somebody at the back, we've got somebody over there. Hopefully we've got somebody with a microphone. We've got lots of hands up. I don't have the radio mic, I left it next to you. It's a slick operation here. Oh, yes, I may have turned it off before I put it back.
Those are me.
As we watch our crew jump into action here. Right, nice and loud, if you will.
What relevant experience do you have which will help you to tackle housing prices and living costs?
Sorry, would you mind repeating that, sir?
What relevant experience do you have which will help you to tackle housing prices and living costs?
What relevant experience do you have that will help you in tackling housing prices and housing rents and rising prices? So, very quickly, tell us some about your relevant experience. I think we can go to Dan first on this.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know, outside of being a student here, I'm a local councillor just down the road in Epsom. One of my roles there is to take on housing issues that my constituents have, which includes liaising with various different housing associations, the local council, etc. So my experience in that sense is that I'm used to going in and talking to senior figures from property companies and getting results for people who need a new house, who can't afford to pay their rent, who need a little bit of extra time to make ends meet. So I would like to think that I'm in a fairly strong position to go in and talk to accommodation on campus, to go and talk to the Vice-Chancellor about accommodation and living costs, because I do that for a living outside of university.
Sorry, what ward was that?
Sorry?
Which ward?
I'm in Epsom. So
oh, in Epsom.
Not
oh, sorry, not here. Not here. George?
As a European Union student, in the second year we have to find a house. So in the second year, when I was house hunting, I looked up in different companies that can rent their properties, and I found some individual landlords as well. So I learned so much stuff about the house hunting. And also in the third year, also I had to move a house because we had a problem with the landlord. So I had some issues there. So I know how to solve issues that may a student have any question about.
Thanks, Bakita.
Well, as well as being a student, of course, I'm also a member of exec. I'm communications officer, and over the past few months, I've had regular contact with students in my role as communications officer. I'm aware of the living cost issues, I'm aware of the accommodation issues as well, and also I know the relevant people to talk to, and I know the relevant senior staff and the university staff to contact as well.
Thank you. We had a few more points from the audience. Oh, one of my friends from G. Have I told you how much I appreciate GU2 Radio? I listen to it.
I don't think we spoke about it enough last night. Should we carry on? No, joking. Okay, up until the point that you decided that you were going to be running for VP Welfare, what have you done on campus to give back to the campus community in relation to events or fundraisers? Are there things that you have done specifically to give back?
Okay, not necessarily a prerequisite for the job, but somebody wants to know, what have you done before putting yourself forward for VP Welfare? In fairness, we do say quite clearly that you don't have to have been involved in anything before to stand for election, but always nice to know about the candidates. So, Bakita, tell us what you've done.
In my second year here at Surrey, I got involved with the Stag. Outside of Surrey, I've been volunteering for Chiva. It's a children's HIV charity, and because of the people I've met there, the young people living with HIV, I was passionate about raising HIV awareness. So in 2010, I project managed and I led an event called Paint Campus Red, and that was basically about promoting HIV awareness to Surrey students, and then that happened again the following year.
Thanks. Dan?
Some of you may remember at the end of January, beginning of February, that there was some snow on campus. Throughout the week where there was snow on campus, I was out gaining signatures on a petition to try and get the university to become an accredited living wage employer. For those of you who aren't familiar with the living wage, the minimum wage is currently £6.08 an hour. The living wage is £7.20 an hour. It's calculated on a basket of goods and in terms of what you need to earn to have a comfortable standard of living. Our petition so far has reached around about 550 signatures, which is why I know that Surrey students are not apathetic, because they're more than happy to sign up to help out and to stand with us in the snow and talk to other students. I firmly believe, and it says this on my manifesto, that any student that is employed on campus should be earning at least £7.20 an hour, because we need to make sure that there's money in students' pockets so that they can get through their course. Guildford is one of the most expensive university towns in the country, I think, the third most expensive university town in the country. And it's the university's responsibility, it's employers' responsibility on campus to make sure that students can get through their degree without having to take on 2 or 3 jobs, but just so they can have the one part-time job to help supplement their student loan or their money from their parents.
Every student should get $7.20 an hour.
Yeah.
Dan, you win this election. You're a trustee of the union. We employ nearly 300 student staff. Are you saying that you would put the starting wage up to $7.20 an hour for all the student staff?
My aim is to get the university to become an accredited employer, and then...
The university are nearly there. They're only a few pence off. The students' union, however, is quite a long way down the road. You're a trustee of the union. Would you put the union starting rate up to £7.20 an hour?
Assuming there was an understanding with the university that they would be willing to increase the grant to the students' union that they currently provide, then yes.
I can tell you now that the Memorandum of Understanding specifically forbids university subvention grant from subsidising commercial activities. Any money to pay staff must come from prices from prices over the bar or ticket prices. So the only money to pay the staff, the casual staff, the part-time staff, has to come from the trading activities. It will not be subsidised by the university. So you would have to put up prices in order to pay people $7.20 an hour.
Okay, that's something that would have to be looked into, and I'm not going to make a firm promise on that because obviously I'm not in a position to. However, there are many students here who are working in the bookshop or in other places on campus through Unitemps who don't provide $7.20 an hour. That cost to the university would be incredibly small in terms of increasing the wage that they offer currently, which I think is £7.05 to £7.20. I think the total cost would be something around £7,500 to £10,000. So it's a drop in the ocean when you've got a £10.9 million surplus. There are possibilities to talk to the other businesses that run on campus, such as Amigos and Starbucks. Who knows what the chance of success is? The only thing I will say is that there are students' unions around the country right now, Kent being one of the latest, Warwick, Manchester, I believe, that are paying all of their staff $7.20 an hour because they realise that as a student body, they have to make sure that there's money in students' pockets. And I understand that there may be implications, and that's something, as VP Welfare, that I'd have to look into and I'd have to consult with students on.
Okay. George.
As an active member of the RAC Society for 2 years now, we have been running some events to raise money for different community centers or charities. And also, for 2 years now, I run the Christmas Shoebox Appeal event during Christmas time, which students have to bring any presents for students or for children of underprivileged families, for communities like Chase and Guild for Action.
Thanks very much. Okay, we're going to G you to it a bit now. Tight of money. We're trying to do more with less. The university have student advice and information. They've got health centre. They've got a big welfare area. They can run health campaigns. They've got a huge accommodation office. The president is a member of council, member of Senate, member of Care Surveyors that can set accommodation prices. Justify to me, justify to the audience why this union needs a VP welfare. Bakita.
I believe that this union needs a VP welfare because the union is recognised by the university as the sole representative of the students. Yes, the university provides other services around campus, but we need an external support system. We need somebody else that's not just the university that is championing the rights and the needs of students at Surrey.
George, why should the job that you're going for still exist?
As a student here and for the students' union, because students' union is run for the students and by the students, I believe that student voice by the students to go to the board of directors of the university is really necessary. That's why I think it's really important to have a VP welfare to run any problems that students have, mental issues, housing, and any other problems that they have. And they cannot talk directly to the university staff, but they can talk to a student. That's why we are there for them.
Thanks. Dan?
The university does a lot of great things in terms of providing services to students, but there will always be someone that doesn't know those services exist. And I think that's what VP Welfare is there to do, to promote the things that people need. Not everyone will be registered with the health centre, but some people might have issues arising out of their university experience. And, you know, as VP Welfare, my door will always be open for those people. If they want to come and discuss something, they can discuss it in confidence with me, and I will do everything I can to help them out.
Thank you. Right, we've got loads of things going here online, some of it from in the room as well. Let's hear from some of the audience now. Who's got a question? Oh, hands up. I'll leave it to Jamie. He's sorted it there. He'll be down the middle in a minute.
I know a lot of you said you weren't aware of where the warden's fines actually go, but they actually get a large proportion actually gets ploughed back into the hardship funds. So on that premise, would you rather fine students more in everyday life in terms of warden's fines, or would you rather that the hardship fund had less funding? So for you, would it be money going into those that need it, being supplemented by the fines, or would it be the hardship fund having less, but students having more money every day?
The point being raised there is that the money from fines goes into the hardship fund, and cut back in fines are cut back in the hardship fund. Let's take a couple of more points.
Hello. I know you've talked about it, but I picked apart the living wage part of your manifesto down. You need to think about the consequences for the Students' Union of this.
Sorry, can we turn that up a little bit? I think we're struggling to hear up here.
Yeah, for a start, can you even afford it with like 300 staff? There's currently a kind of sort of tier-based pay system as well. So you've got team members, supervisors, and so on. So would you pay everybody the same, or would you need to increase above 720 for supervisors and thus increase that for duty managers as well? And how would you afford that again? And as a result of that, we potentially have to increase the bar prices and entry fees to get into the union, and nobody wants to do that, do they?
Okay, question then, living wage. I'm going to say that we've given Dan some stuff to think about. He may come back later on. Have we got another point or a question we want to raise?
Can I just make a comment about where the money's coming from? The student union does make surpluses. Last year it made a surplus of £50,000 in 2010, and 2009 they made 80,000. So the money is there. I just want it to be a clear and open transparency. It's all on the union accounts on the webpage. So there is money to pay staff the living wage. It's a moral question.
We have a point over here in the corner. Oh, we're just changing the battery. Of course, Dan, of course.
Okay. I completely appreciate your points, and in terms of the pay structure as it is, then, you know, if you're going to increase the minimum to 720, then obviously there's going to have to be a shift up for other people. It probably, I mean, I can't make any promises, obviously, but it probably wouldn't quite have the gap that it is there now. It would depend on the finances. As Aaron says, if a surplus is made, then there's money there. I would say, you ask, can we afford it? I would say, can we afford not to?
Let's see what George and Bakita think about fines, the hardship fund, the idea of the living wage, costs on campus. George?
I think the cost on campus now it will be increased by, I don't know how many percent point will be increased, but it will be increased. But we can manage the increase, and we can manage the students don't spend money into the campus. Also for the fines, I think that if the university is doing the fines to the students because they damage something because it's a project of the university, that fines can be used for the students, not for the university, because it's coming from the students.
Thanks. Bakita?
In regards to the living wage cost, I'm a member of bar staff, and my understanding of the living wage cost was that it would aid those with families and those with full-time jobs. So I'm not sure how it would actually be implemented here at the Students' Union. Also, if it was possible for team members who get the lowest rate to actually get 720, my concern as a bar staff member is, would that result in shifts being cut to manage the increases? And also, when it comes to the fines, I'm not opposed to the fines and that system. I just don't believe that the university should rely on fines from students to pay for the hardship fund.
Thank you. Just want to clarify that point. You may have misread the accounts, Aaron. It was a surplus of 50,000 last year. It was a deficit of 89 the year before. Right, yeah. Sorry, some more points on the floor. Oh,
yeah, am I on? Right, cool.
Oh, hello, we're there.
About this whole surplus point, what I want to ask the candidates, and obviously Aaron who raised it, do you think that that £50,000 surplus should go into reinvesting into sort of student activities and stuff that our membership side of the union does, or should it pay for higher wages for 300 students? So we have nearly 15,000 students at this university. Do you want to help the minority or do you want to help the majority?
We had another point here, Jamie.
I understand the point, but the majority of students don't work for the Students' Union, as Jake just pointed out. And what would the VP Welfare do to include those students who aren't directly touched by the union as welfare?
So we are, of course, talking about a relatively small amount of students that work for the Students' Union. There's about 300 of you, but there are 14,000 odd working elsewhere. So there's a very, very wide net to cover. Let's we can maybe pick up on some of those things, but we've talked quite a lot about the living wage. Let's move on to something else that's been talked about online. Let's move on about security. It's a hot topic just before Christmas. Two schools of thought that university security should be securing campus more. They should be locking things down. It's very much the view of the Vice-Chancellor that this is a very open campus compared to many other campus universities. An actual fact that we should probably lock it down a bit more. Or students should take more responsibility for their own security. So it's something that is of concern to students. What do you think that could be done to allay those concerns for students living, studying, working on this campus with regard to their own personal and the security of their property? George, start us off.
In the first year I was living in the university campus. I was living in the ground floor, and I had a problem with the security because someone tried to break into my room whilst I was in the room. I believe if the windows had some locks, because some windows don't have locks, that they just have a handle that you close the window. But if they had a lock as well, so the students will be more secure in the campus. So maybe if we can find the fundings, maybe the university can give the funding for that, just to put some locks on the windows to be secured.
Dan?
I think you mentioned security doing more and students taking more responsibility, and I think you need to find a happy medium, really. Students obviously have to make sure that their flat's locked, that their windows are closed, but there is more that security can do. At the moment, security on campus seems to be very reactionary, whereas it would be preferable to have them proactive, going out and making sure that things are secure. I have friends at the University of Leeds, for example, that left his bike unlocked last week and returned 2 hours later to find that security had put a padlock on it. with a note to go and collect a key so he could unlock it. It's a small step, but something like that can make a real difference to someone. If you're struggling to make ends meet and your £300 bike goes missing and you're not covered on insurance, then that's a massive hit for you. But it doesn't cost a lot for the university to go out and buy a £15 lock, and for someone who's patrolling the campus to put it on there.
Thanks. Bakita?
I would agree. I think there should be more anticipation on the part of the union and the university. I believe that, as Dan has said, that we should be anticipating, and we should be empowering students to look after their own safety, maintain their own safety. I also believe that there should be transparency when it comes to security and safety on campus. A lot of the time, the steps that are taken are behind closed doors. Students may not be aware of what the union and the university are doing collectively to protect students and ensure their safety. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Let's take a couple more points from the floor, and then we're going to start to wrap things up. So, have we got anybody that'd like to say? Any questions to ask? No. And fine. In which case, we shall go to a question that I've got from online. No. Right. The route from campus to Guildford runs through Walnut Tree Close. If you are a resident of Walnut Tree Close, that can be a living hell for you. However, if you're a student, then, that's the quickest way down into Guildford. Have any of the candidates got any novel ways of dealing with the perennial problem of noise on Walnut Tree Close? Are we going to go to Dan first for that?
It sounds fairly simple, and it is fairly simple. The easiest way to deter people from behaving inappropriately is to have people out there to actively deter them. Again, going back to my councillor stuff back at home, if we know that a particular area is troublesome, we will speak to the local police, we'll make sure that they've got resources, that they target their resources in that particular area. All we need really is people to be on patrol on foot or driving up and down the road at the troublesome times, and that should be enough to deter people from behaving inappropriately. And students will behave as they want off campus, but the university can potentially look into fines and such if there's persistent bad behaviour. I don't know whether that's currently in place.
Well, it is possible for the university to take action if you bring it into disrepute, so that is within their remit. In fact, I think they have done it. Actually, they've done it this year. There have been some students this year fined for that. George, what about Walnut Tree Close?
I've seen several times the police go around this Walnut Tree Close. They think that we are students, so if we are going to make any noise, so the university will be heard. So I think if we approach the students, so they don't have to, they understand that because it's a living area, we don't have to make noise, and maybe we can raise awareness about that stuff as well.
Thanks, Bakita.
As well as reminders to students to be considerate of their residents who are their neighbours as well. I think there should be deterrents to ensure that students are respectful. Currently, a proposal has been approved by Union Exec, which will hopefully promote the need for students to be respectful to Guildford residents, and there are basically processes in place which will ensure that students know the consequences of their actions, because after all, we are all one Guildford community, so we should strive to be a community and be respectful for one another.
Thank you. Right. If you were watching last night, you saw that we do things a little bit different now. I'm handing out our little yes-no cards. The candidates will see there's a yes on one, there's a no on the other. I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to count to 3, and they're going to hold up yes or no. And that will bring us to the end of the VP Welfare. We'll be back in about 15-20 minutes for education. Viewers online, over on the red button, will be able to hear what our panel of experts had to say about it. If I could ask you to keep the noise down so that people can home can hear what's saying. Right, enough about that. You all know what I'm doing. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to hold up the sign. So, is campus safe? In a 3, 2, 1. There we are. Ladies and gentlemen, they've done a great job. Candidates for VP Welfare.
Okay,
I don't know where Jamie's gone.
Jamie's gone, Avon.
Okay, so you join us back in Pundit Corner. We seem to have lost Jamie very briefly. So what we'll do is we're going to kick off with the living wage. So I'm going to go to Ollie.
Louis should be able to hear a word that you can say.
Well, if you can try and hear us, Ollie, if you'd like to try and explain what the living wage is actually about.
Yeah, I'm sure Steve can also help me as well. But the living wage is the idea that organisations that hire people at low pay should, at a minimum, pay their workers a decent rate. And the living wage is a concept that's come from the United States of America, and it's been calculated in this country to be £7.20 an hour, and that amount of money allows the average individual essentially to live and to be able to feed themselves and their families if they have families. But it's calculated on the basis of a full-time job of working something like 35 hours a week. So that's the kind of context around the living wage that was being discussed today. And obviously there was quite a robust discussion as to whether we should look to introduce it here at the Students' Union. So I'm sure everybody's got their opinions on here. Steve, is there anything that...
The original living wage campaign was fought at Harvard University in the States, and a student occupation forced the senior management and the trustees at Harvard to up the basic wages of people like the janitors and the cleaners and the support staff at the university. So that was the prototype living wage campaign. So it's interesting to see it revive here. But of course you will always come up against the sort of arguments that we saw in the debate. If you're going to up the wages at any level, the money has to come from somewhere. So of course we saw a rather controversial contribution to the debate there, where it was being suggested that we'd actually have to raise the price of beer in order to
yeah, that didn't seem to go down too well amongst the audience here.
So these are the kind of decisions, obviously, that people have to make. But interesting to see that living wage campaign come to life here in Surrey.
So a lot of the questions seem to be quite money focused. I'd like to put it to you, do you think that the classification of high income, low income students is fair? Jack, I'd like to put that to you.
Oh, that is an extremely difficult question. I think that probably not. I think there is not necessarily a full understanding, certainly in governmental circles, of the particular financial hardship that students face. There is, to some degree, a need to take into account that, as well as learning your subject, you need to learn to manage money and suffer financial hardship. But when you're dealing with something that's going across a whole country, there's a really big room for error on just how much parents are going to be able to give their each individual child, whether or not parents are really in a position to do that, if they've got other considerations to take into account. My estimation is that there are more students in genuine financial hardship than either the university or the government would admit.
Yeah, I mean, there's an extremely difficult balance here for both government and the university. Because while obviously we want to increase and improve access as much as we can to university, we also have to remember that we are a meritocracy. The idea of going to university is for students that are going to make a contribution to academic knowledge, or develop a skill in which they're going to go into the workplace and be a leader in their field. So we've not only got to improve our access, how we reach people that could not afford to go to university, but at the same time there's this issue that we also have to get the brightest and the best to the University of Surrey. And that, with the lack of money, is going to become even more extremely challenging in the future. And there's going to be a key role for the VP welfare to ensure that both of those attributes are met. And it's going to be obviously a question probably that's raised in the education as well. How do we get people into the university that are the best for the university, but also at the same time, how do we assist those people that couldn't get to university? Because a meritocracy without access is not a true meritocracy, because some people can't even afford in the first place to come to university. So it's a very difficult question to answer, and one that will take a lot of the time for these candidates.
So another sort of thing that was brought up was the aspect of cutting back on services. People effectively want more for their pound coin. How do you think sort of the welfare VP can actually tackle this? I'll throw this to you, Ollie.
It's a difficult one, really, and it's something that applies across the Students' Union. That's the kind of angle that I'll take. The challenge that all of the sabbatical officers actually face next year is that ever-decreasing amounts of students are coming through the doors at Chancellors, and ever-decreasing amounts of students are using the commercial services here and at the university, which means that the Students' Union will have less money in its pocket, the university will have less money in its pocket, and that all comes about as a result of the increase in tuition fees and the perception amongst students that they are poorer than they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. And that's actually the big challenge that all of the candidates face. And I haven't heard one answer in the 3 sessions that we've had that leaves me confident that the people that are elected are going to be able to face those challenges as trustees of the Students' Union. I'd like to see, so I didn't actually answer your question so much, I answered a different question, but it is relevant to the debate. Yeah.
I think the reality of it is that as you charge students market rates, as you charge them £9,000, they want more. If we're going to have a system where we treat the student as a consumer, they're going to expect the same benefits that a consumer would want. So every aspect of the university, every service the university asks is going to have to be measured up. They're going to have to deliberate over its necessity and question whether or not that service adds a benefit to a student while they're at this university. And if it doesn't, the university needs to reconsider its worth.
I do have to interject, because as far as I'm of the understanding that the £9,000 fees are actually, they've been in place for quite a long time anyway. They're government supplemented, I think I'm right in saying that. So students aren't actually going to be getting a more expensive service. They're going to be getting the same service with less subsidy. So
but
do you think
that doesn't matter, does it? You're charging the individual the £9,000, whereas before the government was subsidising £6,000 worth of the money, for example, or however much it made up to pay the university the correct amount. You're now directly charging in the future that individual £9,000 a year. Now that means that individual now is going to look at their education differently. They're going to shop around, they're going to see what the university offers them the best services for the best price, and they're going to see about the whole holistic package of an education, and they're going to go with that choice.
And not just that,
can I just come in there? We've got to reject this language of education as a service. Education is not a service, and students are not consumers. Education is not like a packet of soap powder on the supermarket shelf, nor is it even like visiting the dentist and paying a couple of £100 for a filling. It's not like that. Education is a collaborative process between students and their tutors. And if you go in to do a degree, you've got to enter into that collaboration and into that relationship for a sustained period of time, usually 3 years. So it's not a consumerist ethos, and it's not a consumerist paradigm. And I think it's really up to student unions, actually, to help define what the education paradigm is and what exactly the character of the relationship between students and their tutors and students and the university authorities is and is going to be. So actually, posts like VP Education, VP Welfare at Surrey are pretty key, because if you have active people in those roles, then those people could actually help to define what that relationship is going to be at Surrey, and whether you're going to characterise the relationship between students and staff as a consumerist one like Tesco, or whether you're going to frame it in what I think is a more constructive way. It's a collaboration between the students and staff.
I don't think anyone's questioning the education element changing, but when you come to...
No, you just did.
No, I didn't. No, I said the services the university offers as a holistic package. So whether it's a centre for wellbeing, whether it's a mentoring service, what accommodation prices are. The university is much more than simply coming to for an education. The education
is much more than a package of services. The crux of the relationship is that relationship that exists between the student and the teacher. Yeah, it's true, there's a lot which exists around that, orbiting around that, all the welfare services, all the commercial services, but the crux of it is the educational experience, and that's not a consumerist thing.
I'm sorry, but that's just not... This is, I want to take it back to the candidates, but again, this is the debate that's happening amongst the student body. You know, I have friends who think that education is a consumerist package, that you know, they've got choice to go wherever they like. You know, we're having an element of price competition coming into the market now, and many students are thinking in the way that Jamie has said. And you know, I personally prefer to see people thinking in the way that Steve says. But the candidates in these elections need to articulate their vision. They need to articulate what they think should be the student outlook, how they interpret what students are looking for at the University of Surrey, and how they then generate policy to accommodate and to cater for that. So before we get into a massive debate about it, the candidates really do need to answer these challenges that have been laid forth.
I don't think a candidate though would get elected if they viewed it in any other way. I think a candidate that can, as Alan said, express how that pie that currently exists is distributed, they won't be seen as a viable candidate. You can't take these great philosophical questions when you've got 1 year in office. You've got to go in office and ask how you can work within that system. I think today the three candidates explained how they would. It's all about that redistribution of the 10 million.
But at the same time, students, I believe, need to know what are the core underpinnings of each candidate at the end of the day, because they are, on a day-to-day basis, going to be making decisions on these sorts of issues, which is a representative function that we don't have a direct say in as students. So we need to have some idea of what their outlook is, what their philosophical outlook is on these big questions.
Well, actually, the candidates didn't talk all that much about the fees.
No.
I think that was really, to a large extent, done and dusted last year. But the actual cost of living on campus that's what they were talking about. And I think George, he kind of stuck out a little bit by making an emphasis on helping students manage costs. And I think Bakita mentioned that as well when it was being talked about at the start of the session. I don't really see that helping students manage costs is going to go all that far. I don't know if you can force yourself on an ongoing basis to be frugal in that way when all around you is an environment and a lifestyle which isn't like that. Now, Mike here did his £1 a day, £1 a day eating.
Yeah, I'll just explain that to everyone. I actually spent a month spending just £1 a day on food and drink, which was hard work. It was £28 for the whole month, but we did it for £25 in total. So it was me and my
But Mike, you look quite well fed.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
But you wouldn't want to do it forever, would you?
No, you wouldn't want to do it forever. It's roughly because cheap food is bad for you, basically. But I personally believe it is possible to live far cheaper than we do. And I question one of the comments that was made by the candidates, which was when it came to account of crime, students who are living on the poverty line with a £300 bicycle. It's sort of...
I missed that. What was that?
It was basically saying sort of like students, they deserve to have their stuff looked after, especially when they're basically sort of struggling as is. And it just comes across that, I don't know, people don't quite grasp how cheaply you can actually live. I don't think it really...
But then, think about that in the context of accommodation prices that the candidates talk quite a lot about tonight.
and they were right. You know, the Dan Stevens said that he'd been at Warwick previously, and the prices there were so much cheaper than they were in Guildford. Now, I understand that there is a disproportionate cost to living in Guildford vis-a-vis Warwick, but why is it so disproportionate? Why does the university think it's right to increase it by 3.5%? The accommodation costs for next year, and why does the university think it's right to build band D&E accommodation en suite and charge 30-40 quid extra?
That's a more pertinent question.
Absolutely. And
you shouldn't be comparing against other universities or indeed private landlords. What you should be doing is comparing the cost of accommodating students, or students accommodating themselves rather, to how much money they're getting in. When you're giving out 80 or 90% of your termly loan in rent, that loan's not just for rent, it's supposed to be for everything.
I mean, we have to take it back to, I hate to bring back the realist element though, is that there are about, 6,000 students living on campus, 5,000, give or take. Dan's point about not charging during the holidays, there are say 8 weeks holidays in the year, take that 6,000 times 8, times £100 a week, that's half the surplus from last year gone straight away if we did that. So we need to think about whether we can even decrease accommodation costs if we want to use that money, as the candidate said, to give back in terms of scholarships, to give back in terms of various other benefits.
Okay, fair enough. But one of the points that emanated from the discussion tonight was that in the past 5 years there have been 2 above inflation increases in the price of accommodation. And what did the Students' Union do at those particular opportunities? I don't know. Do students know? We need to know what our sabbatical officers are going to be doing when they're in these meetings with accommodation, negotiating on prices. And I think that I got the hint, particularly from Dan and Bakita, that they would be robust in terms of opposing particularly arbitrary increase in accommodation prices, which I think is a very positive thing for next year.
I think student union officers have got to be careful about getting sucked into the management view of things, because there can be different ways to look at a set of accounts, and just because senior university people might present to officers a particular take on the accounts, and they might like to quite cast things in the light of, well, if we cut rents, of course, it means we've got to put up something else. But it can be a bit of a trap sometimes for student union negotiators to fall into. So I think it would have been nice sometimes at these debates to see the candidates take a bit more of a robust stance and be prepared to say to the student body, look, there might actually be a different way to look at things. There might be a different way to break down the accounts. We don't necessarily need to accept the management view of the accounts, that if we save money on for the student rents, that it means putting up the beer or whatever. It doesn't always break down like that. It's not necessarily rents versus beer.
Just sticking with you, Steve, I believe we're going to be going there to the next round. Do you see, have you seen these issues raised at the University of Creative Arts?
We don't have lively hustings like this at the University of Creative Arts. It's very genteel, very polite, and indeed sometimes you wouldn't even know there's an election on. It's all very, very low key. Very, very polite. Not like this, not raucous, but then we don't have initiation ceremonies either.
Are you seeing the the similar issues being brought up? What with tuition fee rises, students demanding better services for their money, things like that. I'm trying to establish if this is happening across the country. Or if
I think the tuition fees is a national debate. I think it's changing the dynamic. It's changing I use the word the paradigm. It's changing that relationship between students and their university, and students and their teaching staff. I don't think that's a national phenomenon, and I think it affects every single university. You've got a particularly big university, at least a lot bigger than University for Creative Arts. So you've got particular problems that go with that. You've got a very big campus, you're a campus university, you've got a lot of students living on campus. So things like accommodation, the safety of the campus environment, the sort of built environment around you, that's all going to be more salient issues maybe than a smaller institution like UCA.
Well, I mean, you raised an interesting point there, because one thing that wasn't discussed at length during welfare was the issues of burglaries and so forth on campus that has apparently been quite prominent and was featured in the Stag this year. And it'd be interesting to see the candidates at a later date disclose their position as campus safety and make sure that campus safety and how they would deal with that is known to the students.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you have anything to say on that.
Oh, it's a little bit difficult because we had the article. I actually went to see the new head of security services at the university. Unfortunately, he was only 3 days into his tenure here, so I couldn't push him too hard on it. But I think really we've got a relatively low crime campus here. We live in a safe area. But that's not to say that there weren't some interesting things that the candidate said. I think George and Dan both mentioned locks. George for the windows and Dan the bicycle lock that security provided just on the spot. Perhaps you could have a situation where the university did regularly lock things, even if it wasn't theirs, and then you could potentially buy the lock. I have to say I was slightly less convinced by what Bakita said about transparency and security. I think it's widely known that security is high and crime is low in this area. And I think the methods by which the university and the union promote security on campus are high profile. You've got the police coming around with their dabber bit of DNA on the laptops and the bicycle stuff as well. I think it's very high profile and students have plenty of opportunity to engage with security programs.
Is the transparency issue not to do with how the university though report crime that's occurred on campus, or how the university talk about how crime has been dealt with on campus to make students feel safe about where they live? I mean, it's very easy to say we're the safest on campus, which the university do, and we rightly are, but it's got to be communicated in a way or contextualised for them to understand, doesn't it? I mean, these are people that are living away from home for the first time.
Yes, I think there is an element of that, but I think part of moving away from home for the first time is hopefully, certainly in this area, realising that some of the fears that you have are unfounded, and that although bad stuff does happen, it doesn't happen to everybody, and in fact here it happens to a very small number of people indeed. And of course it's always unfortunate when somebody suffers at the hands of a thief or a burglar, and those cases should be taken seriously, but you don't necessarily need to be overly alarmist about it.
I think it would have been nice, if the debate had maybe explored some of those areas in a little more depth. Security on campus, some of those bigger issues that we've mentioned, support for students. Interesting that the squeezed middle got a mention in the debate, so that kind of terminology enters the student debate as well. It might have been nice though to see a wider focus on the debate, some of those wider issues or issues of concern to students explored in a bit more detail.
Cool. Okay, so I think we're now going back for our second bout of questions, so I'll hand it back over to Adam.